Hello everyone. Today we have a safety training. It's a safety training on heat illness prevention. Um, we typically have it during this time of year because this is when it gets hot in California and in most places around the country. So it's a good thing to know. I know we're not a program or we're staying inside, but it's still important to know that if you decide to go out, hang out in your backyard, have a good time, and just, get some rays, as they call it. There are some signs that you want to make sure that you're focused on, just in case. And you don't want heat illness. It's something that happens, and it happens to a lot of people. So we're going to go over ways that you can find out if you or obviously somebody else as well is suffering from such a thing, and how to take care of it if they are, or if you are. So we're going to go over it. So water, rest, shade. That work can't get done without them. So that is what you need. Stay hydrated. Make sure you're not pushing yourself too hard when you're working in the sun, and find a nice shady place, because you need to be able to block that sun out. So here we go. This over here. So it says right here, there are two types of heat illness. So there's heat exhaustion, and then there's heat stroke. Heat exhaustion, you'll have dizziness, you'll feel dizzy. You'll start to get a headache. You'll start to sweat. Your heart will start to beat faster. You'll feel sick. You might even vomit. You'll start to feel weak, and you can start to get cramps. And if that gets bad enough, you do need to seek medical help. Now, heat stroke, which is the second type, but the worst type of illness, you'll have, instead of sweaty skin, you're going to have red hot, dry skin. And usually what that means is that your body is so overheated that you've already sweated everything out. And so you're basically depleted when it comes to hydration. So you need, this is why water is important. We need to stay hydrated. You'll have a very high temperature. You may be confused or disoriented, not knowing where you are, being confused about what's happening. You might faint, and you could go into convulsions, or maybe even have a seizure. With that, you definitely need to seek medical help. If you start to feel confused at any point, whenever you're, say, working at the park, when we get back and start doing that, and you notice that things just aren't right, you need to alert someone as soon as possible. You need to find shade. You need to make sure that you're drinking water, but you want to cool yourself off as much as possible. All right. Next part is staying safe and healthy. So ways we can stay safe and healthy. Drink water, even if you're not thirsty, every 15 minutes. So, this is why it's good that we always have water bottles in the van. So if you didn't bring water, then, there's water bottles in the van. If you're working at the park, there's drinking fountains. They might not be the most pleasant all the time, depending on the park, but at the same time, it's water. You need to stay hydrated. But bringing a water bottle yourself during the really hot months, and really you should have one every day, it really is a good way to stay hydrated. Second thing is watch out for each other. So if you're working at the park, you notice you're doing fine. Say you've been doing everything you need to do, you're drinking water, you're taking breaks in the shade, which we should do, and you notice your friend who's just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and you know you notice that they're kind of wobbling or anything like that, you want to kind of go over, let staff know, but also check on your friend. Make sure. First thing is you should let staff know. The more people who have like medical training, I mean, we do first aid and CPR every 2 years, and we have to keep that updated. Wear a hat and light colored clothing. A hat is good because it's another form of shade. It keeps the sun from bearing down on your face and things like that. So a hat is important. And light colored clothing is because, so you see here, it says new when it comes to darker clothing, only because the sun reflects um, light and things like that off of light colored clothing. It bounces off kind of. Whereas when it comes to darker clothing, it actually absorbs. Like my shirt right now, not the best one to go out in because it's black, and it would absorb heat, and so I would actually get hotter faster. Know where you're working in case you need to call 911. So, if we're working at the park, we should know all the names of the parks. So instead of calling it Stinky Park, we should really know what the name of it is. And we all know Fernandez Park, and that's usually where we do the most work. But if you say, I have somebody, they're here, they have heat exhaustion, or something's going on with them, I'm here at Fernandez Park, and I'm with my friend. Please have somebody stop by. Let's see. Oh yeah, rest in the shade. So, most of the time there's trees, there's things like that you can actually kind of get under, and we need to take breaks and make sure that we're resting in the shade, because the shade really does help. That's why most things, even the scurry little creatures, with all their fur, they want to make sure they're not too hot. They don't want to bask in the sun all the time. They'll find shade. All right. Heat illness can be prevented. And it also says, by law, your employer must have, number one, water, which we do. We make sure that you all have water. Where can we find it? In the van. And that's another place to find shade. If you're really feeling hot and you need to cool down, let the staff know. And we've done this before where we take breaks, we go to the van, we sit there, and sometimes I turn on the van and just blast air conditioning, cool people down. Your employer must also have shade and rest. Like I said, we have the van. You must have training, which is what this is. We're training right now. An emergency plan. So, an emergency plan basically is what to do. And this is, the training, and then what to do, if you notice somebody's having heat stroke or if you're feeling it yourself. And in order for us to make sure that this is why we have these trainings at least once a year, especially during these hot months, that what the signs and symptoms are, so that, if there is an emergency, what do? You let your staff know. If it's really serious and your staff isn't right, call 911. If you really know, if your friend's like, I'm sick, please call 911. Let them know where they are. Flag other people down. Say, I need help over here. And, staff could go get water, pour it on the person, have them drink it. We would make sure that we did what we needed to do. But this is, what we need to happen. And this is why we do these trainings. A lot of times people take the trainings and they don't really like them, or they treat them like a joke. But once it becomes serious, then people really start to pay attention. So let's not get to that point. Let's make sure prevention is always best. Make sure we're staying hydrated. We're taking breaks in the shade, especially during the hot months. And, we'll be safe together. Alright, so this is, and you can always pause it if you need to see more, but heat-related illnesses. So you could pause your phone or your computer right now and hopefully be able to read all of this. But I'm going to go over it, anyway. So heat stroke. It says, so what we have here is heat stroke, what to look for, and then what to do when you notice these signs. So heat stroke would mean you have a high body temperature, 103 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. That is very hot. I think at about 105, the brain starts to boil. And that's too hot. I mean, that's really bad for you. You have hot, red, dry, or damp skin, a fast, strong pulse, headache, dizziness, nausea, confusion, and losing consciousness, or i.e. passing out. What should you do? If it's yourself, definitely try to let somebody know when you're kind of hitting the stages of that. But if you can yourself, you want to call 911 right away. Heat stroke is a medical emergency. But if you notice your friend, then you want to do the same thing, because you want to call 911 first. First, get somebody on the way. They have things in ambulances to hydrate people quickly. It could be intravenously, which is into the vein, and they can actually get them going again. Move the person to a cooler place, i.e. shade. Help lower the person's temperature with cool cloths or a cool bath. And depending on what you have, anything is better than nothing. So do your best to try to find something, like water, ice if we have it, a cold pack, put it on the back of their neck until, the medical unit gets there. Do not give the person anything to drink. So I think most of the time it's because they'll probably vomit, because they're that sick, and what'll happen is that will dehydrate them even more. They'll take out essential nutrients. So don't give them anything to drink, you just want to cool them down. When it comes to heat stroke, so there are differences. That's heat stroke. Next is heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion, what you'll have, what to look for, is heavy sweating, person sweating, cold, pale, and clammy skin, kind of like you get when you have the flu. Like their hands will be kind of pasty and sweaty. Fast, weak pulse, so their heart's not beating fast enough. Nausea or vomiting. Muscle cramps, that's a big one. Somebody keeps cramping up, you really need to let them know, like, you gotta calm down there, buddy. Tiredness or weakness, dizziness, headache, and fainting and or passing out. Like if somebody falls down, that's a number one thing is that needs to be alerted to very quickly. So what should you do when it comes to heat exhaustion, which is different than heat stroke? You should move the person to a cool place. They should loosen their clothes. Well, this is for you more if you have heat exhaustion. You should move to a cool place, shade. You should loosen your clothes, kind of air yourself out. You should put cool, wet cloths on your body or take a cool bath. And you should sip water. You don't want to guzzle it. You want to sip it. And then you need to get medical help right away if you start vomiting or throwing up, your symptoms start to get worse and you're moving into the heat stroke stage, or your symptoms last longer than an hour. So, if you're lying down, you're sipping water, you're doing that, and it's not gone away within an hour, you really should call 911. Or, let staff know. Again, they'll monitor you. I think we'd probably be more cautious than anybody. I'm pretty sure that we would just say, we're going to the hospital, because I need to make sure that you're all right. Okay, so the next kind of heat-related illness is heat cramps. What to look for is heavy sweating during intense exercise and muscle pain or spasms. So with heat cramps, you should stop physical activity and move to a cool place, again in shade, or a lot of times if you can kind of find a cool place. Heat rises, so anything lower, will be better. Sometimes finding a nice, like if there was like a marble floor or something like that, it would be good to lie down on that just because it kind of maintains that cold, and that would cool you down very quick if you were, again, doing an intense exercise. Drink water or sports drink. So water is always the best thing. But then there's also Gatorade and things like that. The reason those are good is what happens is your electrolytes get depleted. When that happens, then that's not good. You need electrolytes. It helps you stay, going. When I went to the Grand Canyon, the first time there, the person I went with, their dad stocked the car full of Gatorade, because we went down, we spent our time there, but then you have to hike back out, and you try to do it like as early in the morning as you can with a lot of shade. But we still got out where it was pretty hot, and what happened was we had plenty of Gatorade, and when you drank it, it replenished all those electrolytes, which it was great to have. So, again, when it comes to intense exercise like that, you want to make sure that you replenish those electrolytes. But water is always the best thing. Just make sure you stay hydrated. Again, so for heat cramps, what to do: wait for cramps to go away before you do any more physical activity. If you keep cramping, don't go back to the activity. And then to get medical help right away, if cramps last longer than an hour, you're on a low sodium diet, or you have heart problems. So those are ways that, if that's happening to you, then, if your sodium level is really low, then you really want to make sure that you call 911. Safety is always most important. Don't push it. Next, heat-related illness is a sunburn, which I've had many times. Painful red and warm skin is what to look for, and blisters on the skin is also something to look for. So what to do is stay out of the sun until your sunburn heals. Put on cool cloths in sunburned areas, or take a cool bath. Put moisturizing lotion on sunburned areas. So, moisturizer is good, but aloe vera, I think, for me, is the best thing. I use aloe whenever I have a bad sunburn. And don't break the blisters. What happens is the body naturally reacts. With some blisters, if it was like a green blister, then you would want to pop that, but that's probably not going to happen. But what happens is the body naturally reacts, and it releases blisters to cool down certain areas with water from your own body. And so you want to keep that blister there. Don't pop it, because also what could happen is once you pop it, you're going to expose a deeper level of skin, which then the sun could beat down on into. So you don't want to pop those blisters. And the last type of heat-related illness is heat rash. What should you do? Or what to look for, is red clusters of small blisters that look like pimples on the skin, usually on the neck, chest, groin, or in elbow creases. And what to do if you do notice these things: stay in a cool, dry place, keep the rash dry, and use powder like baby powder to soothe the rash. And that should help with that. So those are the different types of heat-related illnesses. There's a gradation where it kind of goes, to, where you notice the big differences. I think the big one is really looking for somebody that seems disoriented, or they're going to faint or have fainted. Then they're actually pushing it. But these are important signs to look for. Because if somebody even starts with a heat rash and then it hits sunburn, we want to start getting that person cool really fast. Next one, heat risks and impacts. Again, you can pause this. I'll go a little bit closer. So it goes over the differences between heat exhaustion or heat stroke again. For heat exhaustion, you feel faint or dizzy, excessive sweating, cool, pale, clammy skin. Again, you kind of feel like you have the flu, and then nausea or vomiting, rapid, weak pulse, and start to get muscle cramps. So what you want to do is get to cooler air, a conditioned place like the van, drink water fully conscious, take a cool shower, or use cold compresses. So that's what we would want to do, as long as we have all of that available to make sure that would happen. But again, alerting people to how you're feeling, especially if you're hot, is important. Or do you have heat stroke? With heat stroke, instead of feeling faint or dizzy, you would have a throbbing headache. Instead of excessive sweating, your sweat would be over. You would not sweat. Your body temperature would rise above 103. You would have red, hot, dry skin. That's a scary place to be. You would have nausea or vomiting, which is same in both. And as opposed to a rapid, weak pulse, you would have a rapid, strong pulse, so the heart is beating even faster. And then you may lose consciousness. When that happens, this is 911. You need real help. And then you need to take immediate action to cool the person down until help arrives. So again, that's why keeping staff alerted as to how you're feeling when it comes to working in hot weather. Or again, even at home. People work outside. People are gardening a lot right now. If someone in your family is liking the gardening, you gotta make sure you're watching out for them. Give them some water. Say, hey, take a break. Come on inside. You look like you've been doing that for a while. So some of the groups that are at risk for heat risk are athletes. So people who they don't like to run in the sun, things like that. And maybe they forgot their water, but they decide I'm still going to go for it. That's definitely a group at risk. The elderly, young kids, pets. My dog's a sun dog. She loves the sun. I sometimes have to remind her to come in because she'll sit out in the sun sometimes, and I'm like, eee. And her nose will start to dry out, and I'm like, yep, if your nose is dry, it's supposed to be wet. It's time to come inside. But typically, she likes to drink a lot of water. She drinks more water than I do. I'm impressed with that. And and another group at risk is all who do not take necessary precautions. So all of us are really at risk if we're not doing what we've talked about already. Drinking water. Making sure that everybody's okay. Making sure that you're okay, first of all. Taking breaks, wearing a hat, staying in the shade, taking care of yourself. That's what we need to do. Alright, so this is kind of going over it again. Fast facts. I'm going to go over this one quickly because we've kind of covered this pretty well. But maybe they'll have something a little bit different. So protecting yourself from heat stress. Heat stress from exertion or hot environments places workers at risk for illnesses such as heat stroke, heat exhaustion, or heat cramps. Again, this is typically at the park. At the senior center, I can turn on the air conditioning, and we can stay cool in there. But when we're at the park, you're outside, you're exposed. So you want to make sure that you keep yourself safe. We're not out there for that long, but this could come on at any time. So heat stroke, a condition that occurs when the body becomes unable to control its temperature and can cause death or permanent disability. This is why we have to take this seriously. Symptoms: high body temperature, confusion, loss of coordination, hot, dry skin or profuse sweating, throbbing headache, seizures, and or coma. First aid: request immediate medical assistance. Move the worker to a cool, shaded area. Remove excess clothing and apply cool water to their body. These are kind of contradicting each other. Heat exhaustion: the body's response to an excessive loss of water and salt, usually through sweating. So it says rapid heartbeat, heavy sweating, extreme weakness or fatigue, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, irritability, fast, shallow breathing, and slightly elevated body temperature. First aid for this is rest in a cool area, drink plenty of water and or cool beverages, take a cool shower, bath, or sponge bath. And again, when you're drinking those beverages for heat exhaustion, you want to sip on the water. You don't want to guzzle it. Let your body react to it. Next is heat cramps. So affect workers who sweat a lot during strenuous activity. Sweating depletes the body's salt and moisture levels. Symptoms are muscle cramps, pain, or spasms in the abdomen, arms, or legs. And the first aid is stop all activity and sit in a cool place. Drink clear juice or a sports beverage, or drink water with some food. Avoid salt tablets, which I don't think we have, so we'll be avoiding them anyway. Do not return to strenuous work for a few hours after the cramps subside. Seek medical attention if you have the following heart problems, are on a low sodium diet, or if the cramps do not subside within 1 hour. And then the last part, it says to protect yourself. And these are some ways to protect yourself. Avoid heavy exertion, extreme heat, sun exposure, and high humidity when possible. When these cannot be avoided, take the following preventative steps. Monitor your physical condition and that of your coworkers for signs or symptoms of heat illness or illnesses. Wear light-colored, loose-fitting, breathable clothing such as cotton. Avoid non-breathable synthetic clothing. Gradually build up to heavy work, so start light. Schedule heavy work during the coolest parts of the day. That's why we want to get to the park as soon as we can. Take more breaks when doing heavier work and in high heat and humidity. And take breaks in a shade or a cool area. Drink water frequently. Drink enough water that you never become thirsty. And be aware that protective clothing or personal protective equipment, or PPE, may increase the risk of heat-related illnesses. All right. It says to beat the heat. Extreme heat. So heat-related deaths are preventable. What extreme heat or heat waves occur when the temperature reaches high levels, or when the condition of heat and humidity causes air to become oppressive. And so who are most affected? And it says more males than females are affected, but also children, older adults, people with disabilities, and outside workers. Where? Houses with little to no AC, construction work sites, and cars. Be very careful. Make sure you keep the windows open in the car, or make sure you have the AC on if you do have AC in your car. How to avoid? Stay hydrated with water. Avoid sugary beverages. Avoid sugary beverages, such as soda. It is not good for you, especially during the high heat. Stay cool in an air-conditioned area. Wear lightweight, light-colored, loose-fitting clothing. Right, during extreme heat, the temperature in your car could be deadly. Outside temperature, if it's 80 degrees, within 20 minutes it can become 109 degrees. Within another 20 minutes, it could reach 118 degrees inside your car. And again, same thing, 118 degrees. That's hot. It's a dangerous thing. So heat alerts, know the difference. Heat outlook, excessive heat event in 3 to 7 days. That's minor. Heat washes, excessive heat event in 12 to 48 hours. And heat warning advisory, major. Excessive heat event in next 36 hours. And here's some things that we might not know. Those living in urban areas may be at greater risk from the effects of prolonged heat wave than those living in rural areas. Sunburn can significantly slow the skin's ability to release excessive heat. That's interesting. Most heat-related illnesses occur because of exposure to heat or overexercising. And 206 people have died in the U.S. as a result of extreme heat. And this is back in just 2011. I'm sure with the population the way it grows, it's probably become a lot more. $30 billion estimated total cost of the 2012 U.S. drought and heat wave. Interesting facts there. And a lot of it is also, you got to be careful because it's so hot. It dries everything out, and then there's fires and things like that. And I'm sure they actually factor that in when it comes to heat waves and things like that. Oh, pardon me, last one. So these are some questions. I know the last one I took a picture and I sent it to you and I wanted you to answer the questions. This time we'll kind of answer them together because I'm sure we went over a lot of information here. And so, we'll go over it together. I won't have you answer these because there's also on the last one, I think there was like 3 questions. This one's, there's 7 questions. So it's a little longer, more than double. Okay, so the question number 1. What months of the year would you have to be concerned with getting overheated when outside? It's during the summer months. And summer, I would be concerned from, honestly, it could start as early as middle April and last until possibly middle September, depending. Because we've had prolonged summers before where the heat just kind of lasts. And we want to make sure that we're safe during the whole time. October is usually a cool month, things like that. Things cool down then. And in September, things start to cool down once you hit the fall months and things like that. The leaves fall, and then we have extra work to do. But again, it's still important. Because leaves are falling, so people tend to work harder at the park. So we want to be careful. But it's definitely the summer months that we want to be concerned with. Because spring can be very hot sometimes too. Sometimes it starts early. We just have to make sure that we're staying safe whenever we notice, check the temperature. Number 2, if you're outside for a long time, when the temperature is hot, above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, what can you do to make sure you don't become overly heated or develop heat exhaustion or heat stroke? Well, we went over this quite a bit. We want to make sure we stay hydrated. We make sure we want to take breaks. And we want to make sure we stay in the shade. And we want to make sure we don't overly exert ourselves. Those are the things that, people, when they're like, I can push through this, this is nothing. And then suddenly they're like, okay, well, now it's not nothing. We have to make sure we're taking breaks, especially if it's really hot outside. And we have to make sure we stay hydrated. That is to me, the most important thing. Keeping the body hydrated. And you can wear, and again, loose fitting clothing. Wear a hat. There's all sorts of things we can do to make sure that we stay cool and safe and happy. Number 3, when you perspire or sweat, what are you losing and what do you need to replenish? Well, you're losing water, that's one, but you're also losing salt. So that's why sometimes the sports drinks do help, because there is a little bit of salt in there. And the thing is you're becoming dehydrated. And so what you need to do is replenish and hydrate. So you want to make sure that you're kind of taking care of both of those. That's why some of the questions are like, have a little bit of food with it. It's also why we have the food bars in the van. If it becomes serious and somebody needs one and they need water, that's why we have water and food bars in the van, because you want to replenish that salt as well. Number 4, what should you rub on exposed skin if you are in the sun for long periods? Moisturizer, it says. And I said I like aloe vera. If you have those, But we also have, you have sun lotion to make sure that you don't, they have like suntan lotion, but we don't really want that. But you want something that you can put on your skin to make sure that it prevents you from getting burnt. Number 5, is it better to wear light colored clothing or dark colored clothing when it's hot outside, and why? Again, we've gone over this. It's better to wear light colored clothing as opposed to dark colored clothing, because light colored clothing reflects the sun. Black colored clothing or dark colored clothing, it absorbs the heat. So, what lighter clothing reflects the heat. Darker colored clothing, it actually absorbs the heat. Oh, sunscreen. Yeah, sunscreen. That's what you should have on too. We have sunscreen in the van, so if you ever need it, we have the spray stuff, and I don't mind doing it. Number 5, is it better to wear light colored? Oh, sorry. Number 6. This is a longer one. It's already been like 40 minutes. So, is it better to wear tight-fitting clothing or loose clothing when outside, and why? Again, you don't want to wear anything that's going to constrict the skin. It's not, the looser things are, the body can actually release some heat through that. If you have really tight clothing on, you can't really release the heat. It kind of traps it in there, so you're trapping the heat in your body, as opposed to like just kind of letting off a little bit of steam is basically what it is. When you're like, oh, I'm getting hot, whew. I need to, my collar, and you see people do things like this. But that's why it's important to wear loose clothing when it is hot outside. Loose. Number 7, last question. If you like to participate in outdoor activities in the summer, what part or parts of the day is better to schedule those activities or outings? Well, the best thing to do, again, like we said, is like if we're going to go for a hike, things like that, it's best to do it very soon. I think that's why it's important that we pick if you want to do a hiking class with one of the staff, this is why it's best to really be ready to get into a van as soon as possible and say, yeah, this is what I want to do, and make sure that we all get there instead of congregating in the parking lot, which sometimes we do just to kind of, I understand people want to get together and talk and things like that. But if you're going to go for a hike and that's something you really want to do and it's outside, it's best to do it as early as possible when it's cooler. So you take that nice hike when it's nice and cool. You get back to the van and it might be a little bit hotter, but then we have our water bottles and everything, and we can be hydrating on the way back. We get in the van. turn on that air conditioning. Everybody stays cool and safe. Another part of the day is once the sun kind of goes down. Now, we're lucky that we live in the Bay Area. There's been a nice breeze lately. And so, once the sun starts to go down, it gets cooler outside and you want to participate in an outdoor activity. Once the sun starts to go down, it gets cooler outside. Take advantage of that time. But, when it hits like noon and maybe, even 11, it starts to get hot and that will last for a while. And that is the time of day you want to avoid doing heavy work or activities, outside in the sun. Well, I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you for listening. And I miss you all. Be safe out there. We're all staying inside, but I still encourage you to get outside some. Make sure you enjoy the sun. Keratin is very important. The sun has a lot of healing properties. Just don't stay out there too long. And know these signs. Know the signs that we just went over. But take care of yourself. And I hope to see you all very soon. It should be interesting to see how, you all see me, but it should be interesting to see how all the differences that all of you will have once I get to see you. Okay. Bye, everybody.